Hello everyone, today I will tell you about the film Honest Thief. Enjoy watching! Before watching, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. I'm trying to develop this channel and your support is the only thing I have. The film begins with Tom Dolan, a seasoned professional thief known as the In-N-Out Bandit. Over the past 6 years, Tom has successfully pulled off 8 bank robberies in different states without leaving any evidence. The police have no leads as to his identity. Tom regularly visits a vault to hide the money he steals. The vault's secretary is Annie Wilkins, a graduate student in psychology. As they interact more and more, a connection develops between them and it becomes clear that Tom is attracted to her. After a year of dating, Tom suggests that they take their relationship to the next level by buying a property and moving in together. Annie, who has suffered emotionally from a divorce and the difficulties of a previous relationship, happily agrees. However, she remains unaware of Tom's secret life as a notorious thief. Despite Tom Dolan's criminal past, he has fallen deeply in love with Annie and is determined to start a new, honest life with her. To do this, he decides to turn himself in to the FBI. The morning after his decision, Tom contacts the FBI and confesses to being the In-N-Out Bandit, explaining that he stole over $9 million from 12 banks in 7 states. Tom speaks with Special Agent Sam Baker and offers a deal. He will return all the stolen money in exchange for a lighter sentence. Specifically, he asks for a minimum security prison just outside the city, with full visiting rights for 2 years. Tom's motivation is clear. He wants to prove to Annie that he is committed to an honest life with her. Baker, however, is skeptical of Tom's confession. The FBI has received numerous false confessions from people claiming to be the In-N-Out Bandit, so Baker does not take Tom seriously. He agrees to meet Tom at the Charleston Hotel the next day, but hands the case over to Special Agents John Nivens and Ramon Hall, instructing them to investigate the confession. 2 days pass and the FBI has not responded, leaving Tom frustrated. He calls the FBI again and speaks with Agent Sean Myers, who tells him that the case has been assigned to 2 good agents and hangs up. Just as Tom ends the call, there is a knock at the door, revealing Agents John Nivens and Ramon Hall, ready to hear his confession in person. Tom Dolan, now in custody, asks Special Agents John Nivens and Ramon Hall to provide details of his robberies in order to confirm his identity. Tom reveals that he has been targeting small-town banks with holdings dating back to the 1950s. He explains that these banks had an empty building next door, which was crucial to his operations as it allowed him to use a shared wall to access the vault. Tom also reveals that he committed the robberies on Friday nights, using gelatin to treat the nuts and bolts, drilling holes in the vaults and sealing the walls to cover his tracks. The agents insist that they need to know the location of the stolen money before they will consider any reduced sentence deal. Tom provides the address of the warehouse where the money is hidden and offers to accompany them to the location. But Agent Ramon declines the offer, taking the key from... As John and Ramon search for the money, John's attitude changes. He sees an opportunity to make personal gain out of the situation. Rather than using the stolen money as evidence, John suggests that Ramon steal it to pay for his children's education and pay off the mortgage. Despite John's pressure, Ramon remains principled and refuses to cooperate. Tom waits anxiously at the hotel, and Annie eventually arrives unexpectedly. She mistakes John and Ramon for old friends of Tom's, as they expose themselves in this way, and John and Ramon confirm her assumption. Annie is pleased to hear that Tom plans to move into the house they discussed, and leaves to meet Tom at the hotel. Meanwhile, Myers informs Baker of Tom's confession. Having led Baker to believe that no one is investigating the case, John and Ramon decide to hide the money in an unknown location and return to the hotel. When Annie arrives at the hotel, John and Ramon confirm that they have found the money. John, now intent on eliminating Tom to cover his tracks, plans to kill him. As John prepares to act, Tom reveals that only $3 million have been removed from the vault, with $6 million still missing. Just as John asks Tom about the remaining funds, Baker arrives and is shocked to see John pull out a gun. John decides to keep his plans a secret from Baker, and forces Ramon to let him in at gunpoint. Tensions mount and John kills Baker. Tom attempts to intervene, but both he and John fall out of the window. Tom sees Annie in shock and urges her to run to safety. They are forced to flee together after agents shoot at them, but are unable to stop them from escaping. During the chase, John and Ramon realize that Tom has stolen Ramon's gun, making their pursuit more difficult. Annie, confused, demands an explanation from Tom. He promises to explain once they are safe. While they hide, Tom reveals to Annie the truth about his life of crime. He explains that he has never killed anyone or spent the money he stole. His life of crime began after his father was unfairly fired and stripped of his pension by a company CEO who had committed embezzlement. Tom's father, unable to cope with the loss and death of his wife, did not seek justice. Tom turned to bank robbery as a form of revenge and thrill-seeking, but meeting Annie forced him to rethink his priorities. She's the reason he has not robbed a bank in the past year. Back at the hotel in Charleston, Myers mourns Baker's death and vows to find his killer. Meanwhile, Tom warns Annie that she may be involved in Baker's death and urges her to leave town to avoid suspicion. John tells Myers about Baker's loss and accuses Tom of being the killer, also revealing that they found nothing at the warehouse. Tom and Annie part as she boards the bus, and Tom promises that they will meet again. Annie asks him to prove his innocence in Baker's death, and they share a heartfelt goodbye. The next morning, Myers, John, and Ramon review Tom's file and the security footage that shows Annie. They discuss her recent divorce, and Myers tasks them with finding Tom. Annie calls Tom from the warehouse to inform him of the security footage, which shows John and Ramon removing boxes from his warehouse. She has returned to salvage the evidence. Tom tells her to leave immediately and calls 911 for the police, but decides to go to the warehouse himself just as Annie is about to leave her office. John arrives and demands to know where Tom hid the remaining $6 million. As she tries to escape, John attacks her and searches for the memory card with the surveillance footage. Despite her attempts to defend herself with a pair of scissors, John knocks her unconscious. Ramon intervenes, convincing John to run before Annie is discovered. Tom arrives at the warehouse, finds an injured Annie, and takes her to the hospital. He quickly leaves to avoid the police. He calls the FBI and uses Myers to contact John. Intrigued by the situation, Myers decides to visit Annie in the hospital. While Tom is outside, a local cop recognizes him and begins pursuing him. John and Ramon, having tracked Tom, also move towards him. Tom parks behind some bushes, and upon seeing the agents, drives into their car, trapping them. John begins shooting at Tom, who returns fire. During the standoff, Myers spots Tom and begins pursuing him. Tom ambushes Myers and the two engage in a fight. During the struggle, Tom accuses John of being the culprit and reveals that John attacked Annie. Tom disarms Myers, who convinces him to surrender, promising that he will be brought to justice. However, Tom is determined to handle things his own way. Despite Myers' assurances, Tom Dolan throws Ramon's gun at him as proof of his claims and escapes. That night, while staying at a hotel, Tom calls the hospital where Annie is being treated and learns that she is currently unable to speak, but is expected to recover soon. Meanwhile, John goes to the hospital to ensure that Annie does not survive. He refrains from taking action when he notices Myers present in her room. The next morning, Myers confronts John, questioning his belief in Tom's story and the location of the stolen money. Despite John's attempts to hide the truth, Myers remains unconvinced and returns the gun to Ramon, ordering John and Ramon to return to their duties. John remains fixated on his selfish goals, while Ramon fears Myers will discover him. Tom decides to follow Ramon home when Ramon's wife notices his concern and urges him to do the right thing. Ramon, keeping his secrets, tells her that his actions are aimed at her and their children. He asks her to remember this if anything happens to him. Suddenly, the sound of a garage door alarms Ramon, and Tom disarms him, calling on him to help restore his innocence. Unwilling to be John's accomplice, Ramon confesses that he secretly stole the warehouse security camera footage from Annie, unbeknownst to John. He advises Tom to rescue Annie from the hospital because John plans to kill her. Tom rushes to the hospital, ensures Annie's safety, and sneaks her back to his hotel room. The next morning, Tom calls Myers while buying equipment at a hardware store, informs him that Annie is with him, and assures Myers that she is not involved in his plans. Despite Myers' misgivings, Tom is determined to carry out his plan. He returns to his hotel room and assembles the bomb. The next day, Annie, now recovering, insists on accompanying Tom a short distance from John's house. Tom calls John and demands that he confess to his wrongdoing. John, threatening Tom, tries to fire him. But Tom starts a countdown from 10, warning John of a possible explosion. As Tom's countdown reaches its final moments, John's house catches fire and he is forced to jump out to escape the impending danger. After John's house catches fire, Tom hands Annie the CCTV memory card he received from Ramon and asks her to deliver it to Myers. Meanwhile, John reaches his hideout and calls Ramon, convincing him to join him. At the warehouse, Myers receives the memory card from Annie. She tells him that Tom is a good man, and, to demonstrate her goodwill, opens another storage room to reveal the remaining $6 million. John, armed with 2 guns, prepares to face Ramon, unaware that Tom is secretly with him. Tom, pretending to take Ramon hostage, confronts John and demands that he drop the gun, revealing that he has the security memory card. Enraged by Ramon's betrayal, John fights him and eventually shoots and kills him. John then turns his aggression on Tom and a shootout ensues. John manages to escape with the money, leaving Tom wounded. Tom calls John to inform him that he's planted a pressure-sensitive bomb under the seat of John's car. John, locked in his car, is forced to wait for the police bomb disposal team. Tom retrieves the tape recording of John's confession from Ramon's body and mourns his death. When John's car is surrounded by Myers and the police, the bomb disposal team discovers that the device is a fake. An enraged John is arrested by Myers for attempting to steal the money. When Myers returns to his office, he finds an envelope containing the recording, which exposes John as the thief and Ramon's killer. Myers meets with Annie and thanks Tom for helping bring John to justice. Tom, willing to face the consequences of his actions, turns himself in and expresses his desire to become a better person. Myers promises to do everything he can to reduce Tom's sentence, acknowledging his sincere intention to change. The film ends here.